Okay, so I cut in my notch. It's a little trademark. I just use a file, round file, to cut in, and then I cut a small chunk out of the top with the cutting wheel. It's kind of a trademark. Now what I need to do is I need to drill 2 pinholes right here, and then I need to drill a lanyard hole back here. So I'll drill the 2 pinholes right now, and those will be one right about here and one right about here, and that'll be pinned with 16 penny nails. So I'll drill those, and then I'm going to drill a few holes in the middle here for glue to help connect and get in between the scales. It'll also help with some vibration. And then put a lanyard hole in the back. So, let me turn this puppy on. The switch does not work. So, what I'm going to use is a little bit of WD-40 to help lubricate where I'm going to drill. This will help keep the heat down where my bit doesn't burn up. About right there. See all the heat? That's what the WD-40 is for. Sometimes when your WD-40 cans run out, they're not really out. Get into a safe location. If you got a BB gun, use a BB gun. Poke a hole in it and then cut the top off. And you'll get a bunch more WD-40 than you would have normally had. Easy as cake. I got some of that WD-40 on here. Work it down to the end. Set up for the second hole. Just use constant pressure on your drill press. If you don't have a drill press, you can easily do this with a hand drill. Cordless or corded, it doesn't matter. You can get old corded drills at yard sales for dirt cheap because everybody likes the cordless nowadays. But corded would be fine since you're working in a shop environment. Okay, so there's 2 holes for pins. And I'm going to get about a 1/4 inch to somewhere in between a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch, verging on the 1/4 inch for a lanyard hole back here. And then I'll probably just use the same bit and drill 2 holes up here and call it good enough, because then I'll pin with these holes. This hole will be left open, and then the 2 other holes in here will allow for glue to go back and forth and form sort of like an internal epoxy pin between the 2 scales. And I'll show you how to rough up the scales too to make sure that you get a good bond. So I'm going to continue drilling holes. I'll be back with you. Okay, so we've gotten our holes drilled. Everything's set up to the point where we can set this up for a quench. And what I quench in is old used motor oil, which I'll have to heat up a little bit by dipping in. I've got a big bolt on basically a bolt on a chunk of rebar here that'll heat up the end, and dip in before, to where it's a little bit warmer, so that we can get this around 60 Rockwell hardness once it's gone through the oven at 350 for an hour. So what I'm going to do here is set up the forge with a bunch of long sticks and this chunk of pipe, which is the outer cover of an old muffler, a tractor muffler. And I'll just set that in here and build firewood all the way around it to create a chamber that gets even heat, to where I can heat up the entire length of the blade evenly. See, if I can't do that, then it's not even worth it, because you can't temper a blade that has a mix of different temperatures. So this has to get completely red hot before I dip it. So what this does is it creates kind of a high temp oven. So I'm going to build my fire, make sure that my tweer in here is 100% open. There's a few holes in the end here. I get those opened up to where I get even airflow coming out all around this thing, and we'll get to tempering this. I'll bring you in at the tempering part. I'll try setting you up at a place where you can see everything. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're just about ready. So when I dip this in here, I'm going to dip it in just the edge. So from the point to the end of the edge at a little bit of an angle. That way I can get the edge hard, but the spine will remain soft. So that's what I'm going to do first, and then it's a series of dips after that that'll help bring it up to a spring temper. And we're just about ready. Yep, we're ready. See how that's glowing red on the spine? That's just perfect. So we'll dip it, do a quick dunk, let it sit like that for a moment, and now we'll just let it sit right there. Quick dunk, let it sit, and then swish it back and forth. That'll help keep the steam that's bubbling the oil away, help keep it from getting too involved here. Check, and about the time the back loses its color, you can dip it in and swish it around a bit, very gently, because you want that spine to be really soft. Right about now it's just a game of waiting for it to cool down. Whoa, don't let it slip like that. But that can happen when you've got oil in there. At this point it's fine because it's pretty much cooled off. But you don't want to do that at the first dip. See, I don't have any grip anymore. So now I'm just gonna let this cool a little bit. I'll wipe off the oil and I'll just buff it with that sanding disc, and then we'll go down to the house and bake this at 350 for an hour, and that'll be done. Then we can try to break it. One of the good tests that I'll do once this is cooled down is you take a file and see if it skates across the edge, and that'll tell you if you have a good edge. Because if it's skating and it's not digging in, you've got it hardened. You will dig in a little bit all the time because you'll have a layer of scale. You got to get that layer of scale off first, and then you can see if it skates. So always go, you know, several swipes to see if it skates instead of just going one. Because if you go one, if it's digging in, it's probably just the scale. So make sure you go several times and make sure that the file skates. And then we'll have it ready. Okay, so here is the next part of the tempering sequence. So grab yourself a nice beer, and you're going to put this in the oven at 350 for an hour. That's the way I've found that it works the best for me. Really, the only reason for shining it up was to look for the color along the edge. So the edge should turn somewhat of a straw color by the time it's done. So look for that. That'll assure you that it's around a 60 Rockwell hardness. Somewhere around 55 is probably the closer match, but it's so close. It's somewhere in there, and I can't measure actual Rockwell hardnesses. So we're just going to throw this right in the oven. And you can use just a regular oven. It makes no difference whatsoever. And now we will wait 1 hour. See you then. Well, welcome to my nightmare of a shop. But I got this knife in here, and I just need to test if it's worth it. So you gotta bend it, and always bend away from you, because if it does break, all the shards fly away from you. See that? That's giving me a lot of resistance. I don't know if I can pull it back too much further. It doesn't feel like it's gonna break. Go from the other side. I think it'll work. So the reasoning behind this is before you've done anything to the handle, anything to the edge, it just came out of heat treat. It's to make sure that it's worth it and you don't spend a lot of time shining it up, sharpening it, and putting on a really nice handle just to have it break on you the next day. So this gives you a little impression of, oh, it's going to be strong enough to withstand anything that I might want to do with it. And guys like Tim Lively and Ty Goo even do this because since they're selling large amounts of them, they don't want to spend any extra time that they could avoid. So just doing the simple bend test to make sure that it's not going to snap in two is a great way to make sure that you're not wasting your time on anything in the long run. Because if it does break on you at this stage, then you don't have to spend a longer amount of time making a sheath in the handle and sharpening it, because then all you got to do is pound out another one, which takes about a third of the time as the rest of the stuff does. So I'm going to get into, I'll use a belt sander. I use a wood belt sander for most of my flat grinding, and then I'll get some micarta. There again, I have to find out where it is in the mess, but I'll get it cut out, and I'll do all of that down here because I'll show using a drill, a regular drill, to drill out holes and stuff. But I'll get going on this and bring you in on a few parts.